Hello, everyone. So I am here today for another episode of Plain Rainbows, which may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the misfit Amish. If this live stream causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals. Further, you may need to cease listening until you're in a place to be able to listen better. With that being said, welcome to our final episode of Plain Rainbows Season 3. I am joined by my co-host, James!
Hi, everyone. Happy Pride.
Woo woo! And lastly, I am joined by our guest, Kelly Hofer. Did I say it right?
Hello. Yes, you did.
Oh my God. I got it right. So Kelly, for many who may not know, is a Hutterite.
Correct.
And he has had a very interesting journey to where he has done a lot of artwork in regards to Hutterite and his specific Hutterite journey. So with that being said, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Kelly Hofer, and I used to be a Hutterite and now live in Calgary, Alberta. I grew up in a Hutterite colony just southeast of Brandon and lived there for 19 odd years. I worked there as a fire truck manufacturing electrical engineer and CNC water jet operator. And then also before that as a carpenter. And the whole time I was doing that, I was also becoming, I guess, a photographer. So I left in 2012 when I was 19 years old and moved to Calgary, where I have a sister that also left and lives. And when I left, I came out of the closet, and in doing so was the first Hutterite that I know of that came out publicly. And it's been an interesting journey because of that, and it's been decently positive from many perspectives, but like there's a lot of religious hate in that as well. But overall, it's been a productive coming out, I would say.
Well, I mean, at least it's been productive and there's been some positivity.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of like religious trauma, there can still be like positive aspects, but both can exist side by side simultaneously. You can
Indeed.
be glad that you had like the ability to come out and that it has changed some things for some of your community, your
Mhm.
community of origin, and people from that community or from that culture, right?
Mhm.
But you can also be not exactly happy with some of the religious trauma around that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. I am not a fan of religion on any front.
Oh, gee, I wonder why.
The thing is, I never, like even living on the colony, I never really found myself to buy into the religious kind of doctrine and the religious indoctrination. So I don't really see myself as ever having become non-religious. It was just non-religious the whole way.
So you were physically in, but mentally you were not even there.
Yeah. Mentally, I was like into science.
You know that like Jehovah's Witnesses actually have a term for that. They call it PIMO. It's like PIMO. And it's called like this is totally off on a tangent, but they talk about this phenomenon where people are physically in the church, but for whatever reason they're mentally not even present.
Oh, there's so many of those in the Hutterite culture in general.
Oh wow!
So many of those.
So I noticed you're talking about being an electrical engineer. Are you? Do people ever confuse your Hutterite background with Amish?
Like all of the time. So most people don't know who Hutterites are, and most people know who Amish are. I think somehow because you're more old school, you kind of have better branding because of that as a culture, or more memorable branding.
Or how about this? What if Amish exists not just as a religion, but also as a business, culture, as a way of life? And their branding has been upheld by academia and media of all sorts and types.
Yeah, that sounds about reasonable. But yeah, like people confuse us all of the time, and like I will say, I often, when people don't know who Hutterites are as a baseline, I'm like, we're the cousins of the Amish and the Mennonites.
Like, you're not really that.
Yeah, but
But
we're like the Amish and Mennonites in that they're all Anabaptists, but we live in colonies unlike the Amish and Mennonites, and we basically practice socialism where everyone within the community contributes to the one bank account and everyone is taken care of equally. So, and aside from that, I don't, and technology, like the difference in technology use, I think those are the two main differentiating factors.
well, see, but the thing is that not to speak for Mennonites, but I am aware that there are many different varieties of Mennonites. So you have
Hmm.
like what you call the institutionalized or assimilated Mennonites who look like me and you today, right?
Hmm.
You couldn't pick them out from the street. They're more like using electricity. They're more, I'll go to college, stuff like
They
that.
usually wear denim
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
pastels.
And then you also have like you have New Order Amish that do use electricity. They do go to college. They use like more technology.
Hmm.
But then you have like old order Amish. Like, so the thing is it's not that all of us are averse to technology. It's that some
Hmm.
of us are averse to technology. The type of Amish that I was in all 5 communities, we were more averse to technology. Each
Hmm.
one of those communities had varying degrees of less technology, which is why I looked at the pictures in your book and I was like horrified because y'all be using combines with rubber tires. I about fell out my chair. Or like the forklift.
Why are you pointing out the rubber tires? I can understand the combine, but what does the rubber tire have to do with this?
Well, one of the communities that I lived in, we could have tractors, but they had to have steel tires.
Why?
That was the rules.
Okay, sure. Okay.
So, I mean, those rubber tires, though, Kelly. I
Scandalous.
just feel like y'all are scandalous and a little bit worldly. And then I started looking more and I see red dresses, red and purple dresses. So I'm going to have a
Mhm.
meltdown about that. Well, you explain like the type
Yeah.
of like, things y'all were allowed to have.
So I came from one of the more liberal colonies, like of all of the colonies of all like 550 of them. And I'd say we were in the top 10 most liberal in how fast we integrated technology, the internet, cell phones, computers, like engineering, like going to college, going to university. I think our colony was quite good on that front compared to others. In terms of fashion, there was definitely some that were a bit more liberal, but we were up there as well. Like pastels were worn, bright colors, like the engagement.
Patterns?
So many patterns, beautiful metallic patterns, lace overlay patterns on wedding dresses.
Oh my
Non
God. My
non
heart.
plaid non non-plaid patterns for men. That was like, whew,
What?
right?
You're gonna give Mary a meltdown. She can't handle it.
I just can't handle this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be okay. I also noticed something else is some of the coverings in your photographs, they were like colors and patterns and
Coverings?
yes, like I don't know what y'all call them.
A mitts or like a tiefel is the one that the adults wear, like the adult women. That's like either black or black with polka dot. And then the ones that the small girls wear, that's called a mitts.
Oh, okay. So the mitts, which we call a cop, by the way.
Yeah. So
We would
yeah,
call
those are usually quite brightly colorful. Like they're almost never black and white.
yeah, I was just I almost had a heart attack looking at your pictures. And then I was like, okay, wait, this is the Hutterites. I'm just going to talk to Kelly here. And Kelly's going to explain these differences in a way that makes sense to our audience and our listeners,
Mhm.
and so they can understand that like Hutterites fundamentally operate in a different scale. Like they're more socialist, they're more in your experience, what you experienced was way more liberal. It's not
Mhm.
even remotely close to what I experienced in my older Amish communities.
Yeah. So I would start maybe with like education as the basis. So our colony has had high school and college and university education as an option since the early 90s.
Wow.
And that was because there was a nearby group of colonies that started a system called ITV, which is called Interactive Instructional Television. And because the government, because all schools on colonies are public schools, surprise, surprise, the because the government only allocates like 3 teachers for the 30 students we have, and those 30 students are from K to 12. So there's not enough teachers to do a solid job of teaching across that many grades at the same time. So to overcome that, a bunch of colonies banded together and built it's called the HBNI network, the Hutterite Brethren network, where we used our grain handling systems as like, I guess, microwave towers for connecting all the colonies and building our own internet infrastructure. That,
Wow.
that infrastructure allowed us to connect all of those colony schools, like even in the mid 90s, with a Zoom like product where it was just live teleconferencing with 20 to 30 different like colony classrooms across Manitoba. So we could have really high quality teachers, like, or like choose from among the best teachers, have them teach 60 students in one grade rather than 4 students in 3 grades type of deal. Um, and I think that came out of the realization from colony ministers that the lower grade of education wasn't viable anymore with how much Hutterite colonies were moving to manufacturing. Like we needed to know a lot more math, a lot more engineering, machining skills, and so on, and ended up having to hire out a lot of the higher skill labor. Like in our colony, we build fire trucks, so we have a few outside engineers that come in and help design the fire trucks, and we do our own stress testing. We do our own kind of testing at the end with the fire trucks to make sure they meet the specs that they need to. But kind of shifting over to more manufacturing necessitated the higher education. And with that higher education, I feel like a lot more like the social values shifted a little bit from being like, it went away from being kind of this naive following of the tradition for the sake of following the tradition towards more of an understanding of what the Hutterite culture was about, and kind of taking the parts that were actually critical to it, amplifying those, and also kind of getting rid of old traditions that nobody wanted anymore, basically. For example, like women used to wear the kind of an overskirt that was made of a darker kind of sheer material that they had to wear everywhere to kind of dull their skirt and make it a bit darker. And that went along with like polka dots on shawls, which were kind of a sign of old values. Um, and in general, like the colonies with the larger polka dots tend to be a bit more conservative, whereas the ones with no polka dots tend to be more liberal. For just from an outsider perspective, that is kind of a good guide. And
Wow.
and with that education system, I think also came a lot more educated women, because a lot of the teachers that are now teaching English school in Hutterite colonies are Hutterite women that went to university, got their degree, their bachelor's degree in education, and are now teaching on the colony. Which I think once you start doing that, it's inevitable that you get feminist kind of values creeping in and making themselves known. And I've definitely seen a lot of positive movement in that direction on the colonies, from women having more of a vote to them working in the shops more, like in the industry more, less focused on just raising babies and like doing the household chores, and more on contributing to the colony's economy and getting educated and helping the outside community more, rather than the traditional roles that women may like, but they shouldn't be bound to just doing that. I think they should have the choice as to whether or not that's all they want to do on a colony, if everyone is assumed to be equal. So,
Oof.
yeah, I
So,
think
are you saying that women being bound to a role, or the expectation that women should be barefoot and pregnant and have as many children as possible, then they should take care of the home, and they should always, be expected to maintain that role? Are you saying that's kind of limiting?
that was a nice level of sarcasm.
Oh, good, you get it.
No, it's such a toxic trait, I find, that usually men, and usually older women, impose this rigid standard of what someone must be in order to be a part of their home. I think it's incredibly demeaning for people that aren't that don't fit that role, that don't want to fit that role, just being shoehorned as a human being into just this place where you should belong, without actually asking the person, do they like it? Do they approve?
Would you like to go educate my former my community of origins bishop? I mean, I feel like he could benefit from hearing what you have to say about women's roles.
Oh, he'd
It's,
walk out of the room so quick.
it's, I
He's
mean,
like, he's like, I don't need to hear this.
he would.
You are the devil's mouth. Right.
Oh my, better spill that.
Well, the whole reason that the Amish don't attend higher education is because the church is afraid that we'll leave if we get education. I mean, ignorance keeps community together.
Yeah. Like, you can only control people if they're more ignorant than you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a big one.
And which says a lot about the level of education of those ministers and those leaders, that they'd feel threatened by someone with a grade 12 education. And like, if all it takes is to undermine your philosophy is someone with like basic knowledge of the world, then your philosophy isn't meant to stick around. It is, if it doesn't have the durability, it doesn't deserve to stick around. And I say that as well with like ministers. So they obviously also have the opinion that if you're educated, you're more likely to leave. I have not found that to be the case. Like in the Manitoba colony I come from, if you compare the colonies that have the grade 12 education, have university education and college education, usually for the trades, there is not higher rates of leaving. I'd say they're even lower, because the people actually feel fulfilled in going after what they want to in terms of education, in terms of their own potential. And also, if you want to foster an appreciation for your own culture, it may be worth giving the people an understanding of what your culture is. And that's from an outsider perspective as well. Like, you have to understand how your culture fits into the fabric of cultures around the world in order to actually appreciate it and want to preserve it and want to put in the hard work of changing it to pass it on to preserve it. Because if you don't change, then the world never doesn't change. So if you keep on not changing, you'll be just destroyed as a culture. You'll be undermined. It's not a survival instinct that's useful to just stay the same.
Well, would you say that it is somewhat human to constantly be changing, to
Yeah,
adapt, and to evolve?
that is
Because
the point of
history,
education.
because throughout history, have we not done that as humans collectively?
Precisely. So, like, I understand that old people want to not change because they've learned something when they were young. So that's like within a single generation change, and that's a bit harder to impact. And you just have to depend on old people passing away for change to become the norm, and young perspectives kind of replacing them. But if you impose kind of the unwillingness to change that old people feel onto all the young people, your culture will just die. And it's not going to be, it might not be a quick death, it might not be a obvious death, but it's just going to die into obscurity,
And
I find.
it might be a slow and painful death too.
Yeah, it might be a tyrannical death, it might be a quiet death, it could be all over the map, but the thing that is inevitable is death if you're not willing to change.
If you're not
And
willing.
and like for myself, I see Hadarite culture as having many valuable things. Like they do food exceptionally well, they do social welfare exceptionally well. Like there's very little loneliness, there's no homelessness, there's very little drug dependencies, there's not a lot of antisocial behavior. There's really good social safety net for when you're sick, disabled, pregnant, old, like, and can't work. So that and quite a few other things, like they're beautiful things that shouldn't be destroyed. But if you don't change over time, those things will just go with the destruction that is wrought by not changing, I find.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your analysis of that. So, with that being said, I kind of like to talk a little bit about like how did you go from being in the Hutterite community to becoming a photographer? Like you mentioned briefly that you started taking pictures and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
but like your photography is well known. Like how did you go from one to the other?
Um, like in any other context, it would be kind of a normal story. So like so going back like way back before I was born, my dad left the colony and he enjoyed photography as well. He had a full-on big DSLR in the 70s. He was living here around Calgary, maybe Lethbridge, I can't quite remember. He had like professional photo equipment. We have a bunch of slides of his at home. So like there was a little bit of photography from that end, but I had very little exposure to it because he had completely dropped that hobby. But my dad is the high school principal in our colony and a high school teacher. And with the ITV system that I described earlier, all of our classes were done online. And we often had to document stuff for classes, like projects we did that we had to take photos of and send in to the teachers because those teachers were always remote. So we had a school camera, as many schools do. That school camera, because of the way gear just disappears on a colony if you leave it unlocked, it lived at our family home. Like my dad took it home whenever the school day was done, and I just had access to it. So as someone that was doing a lot of art at that time, like I was doing a lot of drawing, painting, I was doing photo editing before I shot photos, which was weird. Um, so it was just like another medium that just kind of organically started. I started shooting photos at home of nature first, nighttime photos. Just the first like 2, 3 years, there were very few people in my photos because nobody liked being photographed. But then people just kind of started ignoring me because I had my camera around so often and just photographed everything. And I think that was kind of the key to getting a lot of my photos was just I had it on me not like an obnoxious amount of my life, like the camera. So people just ignored me and I was able to capture them in more realistic settings. And so I started shooting my first photos when I was around 10. Um, I posted a lot of the photos online on Flickr and WordPress back in the day when those were things.
I love
Um,
WordPress.
yeah, like they got me into trouble a lot. Those like online postings because the minister obviously didn't like it. He made me take down and delete my blogs multiple times. But I also blogged about women's rights. I blogged about the Hutterite split. I blogged about other Hutterite issues that happened and are still issues to this day. Like that got me into trouble all of the time, especially posting photos of people without their permission because nobody would ever give me permission. So I'm like, fuck this, I'll just post them anyway.
Oh my.
And through that, I actually got to know quite a lot of other photographers outside of like English photographers or outsider photographers. And one of them ended up giving me a camera for my 15th birthday, like a proper, like professional DSLR with a lens. So that kind of opened up a whole new door of creative expression because it was a much better camera. It wasn't just a point and shoot, it had a lot more creative control. So I went with that and just kept shooting.
And editing and putting it out there.
Yeah. And to this day, I'm still doing it at a professional level. That's my main income, my main job. And actually, this week, I just started training for the International Cinematographers Guild, which would get me on film sets as a camera operator for film sets. So I'm in a training program for that, which is quite exciting.
That's wonderful.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Hell yeah.
That's going to be like a 2-year program.
Mm-hmm. What you got, James?
Should I jump in and mention the film, Kelly, that you did, Queer Hutterite? Was it BBC that did that film?
No, so BBC did the first film that I was ever in. So right around the time of me leaving, like a few months prior, like it started basically a year prior, there was a BBC documentary crew that reached out to me initially, looking to do a documentary on Hutterite culture. And the filmmaker she had done a documentary about the Amish as well. I could find you the name of that, and it even won a BAFTA, like a British Film Award for it.
Okay, so can I just interject? Sure. 99% of the films about Amish are literally so inaccurate that I can't even stand to watch it, and I have been told by my partner that I'm not allowed to watch them because they're too awful. Just for the record. Thank you.
Yeah, all good.
I think you're talking about Devil's Playground. Maybe. And that was really good, Mary, that film.
So she's done 2 of them. She's like Amish, A Secret Life, and the other one is called Meet the Mormons.
Wow. Okay. The film that you did though, the Queer Hutterite film, that was really good. And so how do the Hutterite community, like how do they what is their viewpoint on being gay or lesbian? Like what is if you want to go there.
Oh yeah. Toxic. Like at the baseline, it's very toxic, very fundamentalist religious. So when the BBC crew showed up initially, they wanted to film in our colony and have me be a larger part of the documentary. But the minister in our colony, after giving them a go-ahead, rescinded his permission because he got a few complaints from people in the colony who just weren't comfortable around cameras. So they ended up moving to Maple Grove Colony, which is also featured in the film, where my mother is from. And so it's my mother colony, and I know everyone there. Initially, when she interviewed me, they were supposed to put a wedding into that documentary at the end, but again, the minister, and they had planned out everything. They had all the time set, all the film crew set up, and they were all coming. But then, last minute, the minister actually rescinded permission for them to film a wedding. because some old woman or old women complained about it. Because she now had a part of the film that was undeveloped, or a part of the film that didn't have a plot for it anymore, they were kind of looking for extra footage. And at that time, I also told them that I was leaving the colony because I was gay. So she obviously was very interested in that story because it's kind of a dramatic story in that context. And I had been helping them the whole time as a fixer. And a fixer is someone that basically is the boots on the ground, that knows the people, that gets a documentary crew their access and leads them around, tells them how to manage expectations, how to communicate, what not to say, and so on. It's the person that knows the culture and helps a crew. So I helped them do that. I did all of the translations for the footage that was shot in Hutterite German. I did all of the publicity photos that they wanted for it, and filmed a few of the things on a GoPro that they gave me, like a few of the scenes. So she asked for permission to film me leaving, and in those interviews, I definitely come out, if I remember correctly. However, later on, I just told her I wasn't comfortable coming out in that film yet because it was a bit too public, a bit too thing. So I kind of alluded to it, but it wasn't kind of a very strong signal that anyone would have picked up on. So they filmed me leaving. I filmed myself on the bike, and then they kind of took over once I got to my sister's car in that leaving scene. And they filmed me for the first 2 days in Calgary. And initially that film went over pretty well. Most of the Hutterites loved it, but it was only after they saw the comments on YouTube of what other people thought about it that they started hating it, that they started seeing it as a negative view on the culture. So that was an interesting thing. And then several years later, a producer here in Calgary, I think her name is Laura O'Grady from a small film company, saw me at doing some talk at an event called, I think it's Pachakacha, which is a 10-minute, people speak for 10 minutes and move on to the next speaker on a specific topic. She saw me there, liked the story that I did because I talked about community and a Hutterite perspective on the idea of community. And she asked to do a documentary about me, and we ended up just calling it Queer Hutterite and making it pretty plain and simple what the documentary was about. And that went over like a lead balloon in in the people that knew me. They didn't really like that a lot for obvious reasons. But I think it has opened up a lot of conversations that otherwise would have never happened, because it gave the concept of Hutterites that are gay a face, a name, a place, a seed of a start of a conversation. And even the outreach communities that I've worked with here in Calgary, the ones that bring in immigrants and asylum seekers from other countries that are gay, whenever I talk to them about gay rights on Hutterite colonies, they just exclaim to me that, I never thought of that. Never thought of someone just outside of our city maybe also needing a system like that, because Hutterites have no means to communication with those types of organizations once they leave, or when they're still at home. They don't have the internet in most cases. In most cases, they don't have a personal phone. So getting even to know that there is outreach societies, it's a big deal. It takes a lot of work to actually find that information when you don't know that information exists, know how to find it, all of that. Yeah.
Is it the same? Is it similar to where for example, I spoke like my primary language is Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, is I didn't even know what resources to look for to begin accessing resources. Is that the same? Is that kind of what you're
Yes.
getting at?
Like we were, or at least I was completely unaware that there might be resources. So, like one of the first things that we did as a group, so I sat down with a bunch of my other gay Hutterite peers here in Calgary at one point, and we were sitting around some bar table, and we just talked amongst ourselves and decided to make a Hutterite Facebook group, like just a secret group. And that was kind of the first time there was actually any sort of community. Like after I set up that group and those joined, and we slowly added other members as they kind of reached out to us and got referred and kind of vetted, because it's a secret group and people's identity in it is actually highly confidential, because if they get outed, they'll get kicked out of their colony, because a lot of them are still on the colony and they're in that group. And there's been like more groups that have been formed now, like chat groups where there's now a bit more of a community. There's a lot more talking together and the creation of some sort of identity, I guess, as a splinter of Hutterite culture, or a subset within Hutterite culture.
Do you feel like queer Hutterites are now able to exist because of these conversations?
Not openly in a colony yet that I have seen. Like there might be some that I just don't know about, but I don't know of any Hutterites that are out publicly to everyone in the colony. I know of some that are out to a few of their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And even that's extremely brave, because, sorry, my burping is so much. Because even if this one wrong person passes it on to the wrong other person, that gossip train just never stops. So even coming out to one or two people is extremely risky because of that. But I definitely think there's been more of a sense of cohesiveness since those groups have been formed. Because like when I left, I didn't know of any other gay Hutterites. It took me like a year to meet any others here in the city, because it was just just nobody was brave enough to be out publicly, because even if they leave, they often want to still be able to visit their families, so they keep that part of their identity hidden. So it's quite challenging to come out in any context if you still want a relationship with your family, and that makes it extra challenging for a lot of them.
Thank you so much for spending all of that time to explain that. That actually needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
And it's also parallel to your Amish cousins.
Yeah.
It happens.
And I would say on the same note, like not all gay Hutterites want to be atheist or agnostic in the same way I do. Like some of them actually want to still be Christians on the colony, and they just happen to be born gay. So it's a hell of a
yes.
It's a hell of a situation to be put into if you don't want to leave. Like for me, I wanted to be an artist full time, and I wanted to be out as a gay man, and I was like, those are conditions on which to leave. And I just wanted more freedom. I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet people that are different on a regular. I wanted to have opportunities. So I left for like a few kind of main reasons, and then just a bunch of like small grievances on top of that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So we're about to wrap things up, but one of the things that we do is we always ask our guests, so if you could go back and tell your younger self, or anybody who's in the same position that you were in, something, anything, what would you tell them?
Grow a set of balls and come out earlier. Because like I kind of often wish that I had known what the Canadian law, like what protections it gave me as a Hutterite, like even on the colony, that I could have easily come out on the colony and really not face any proper repercussions, because a colony is a corporation, and a corporation is not allowed to discriminate based on sexual orientation. So, like, knowing my rights as a Canadian in terms of free expression, free association, like the freedoms that I actually had, if I would have known those more, I think I would have been a lot more confident about my ability to come out, and also not being in self-doubt about my identity, because obviously on the colony everything that is straight is normal, like, and if it's normal, it's right, and that's the only thing that matters, is like the majority consensus for the most part, which in many ways is a very exclusionary and very toxic way of living if you never want to adapt. Like,
Yeah.
if you're never around people with other perspectives, if you don't allow them to flourish in your own community, you'll never adapt. Because if you just kick out everyone that always pushes the boat a little bit or pushes the agenda a little bit, if you always kick them out, your culture will just languish and die, because it's not allowing those diverse voices to actually help make it better, help make it stronger, more resilient, more like cohesive, more loving to everyone. Because I don't believe in that idea that a culture has to be one type of person, one type of personality, one type of philosophy in order to work together and be a singular unit. I don't believe in that.
Mm-hmm. That makes
So
sense.
yeah, that's kind of my take, is like, be brave and do stuff that makes a difference.
So, or maybe even challenge your own perceptions of who you are.
Yeah.
Explore
Well, that's
yourself.
step one. That's step one, is like, know who you are to a fairly high degree.
Yeah. What about you, James? Got any
Well,
parting words?
yeah. Well, first, Kelly, I'm just across the river from you in Detroit, so we're kind of neighbors, right? But
Such neighbor, such like 5,000 kilometer away neighbor.
so like my understanding is there's now Amish in Canada's, is it Prince Edward Islands? Is that right?
I have no clue.
Okay. And
Something like that.
there's also a lot of Mennonites in Canada.
There's a lot
So
of Mennonites in Manitoba, even, like in kind
Manitoba.
of
Okay.
north central Manitoba.
Yeah. So I guess I would just want to give a happy Pride shout out to everyone in Canada. I mean, we got you, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a struggle, but we're doing it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And yeah, the reason that the Amish they're like literally held together by church rules. Like, like if Mary and I are both in the Amish and Mary tells me that she's gay, and I'm gonna take that to the minister and she's gonna get in trouble, and that's how they keep Amish people Amish, beyond the fact that you don't get education. So this is a really good point in our respective cultures, is growth and learning and acceptance and tolerance, and that's something
Those
that
are good virtues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like cherry pick that from your Bible.
Oh my. Well, didn't you know that, AFAB people like me can't possibly read and comprehend the Bible because we were created second and we are the lesser being?
Truly, truly, you could not possibly understand anything with your feeble mind.
I know, right? But hey, with that being said, I mean, I want to thank you, Kelly, and I want to thank you, James. Thank you, James, for being my co-host. As always, it's a joy to be doing this with you. Thank you, Kelly, for being our guest and for sharing openly some of your Hutterite experiences. Y'all check out Kelly's creativity. They are like, he is freaking phenomenal. His photography is fantastic, and it shows a glimpse into Hutterite life that I had never seen before. So it really kind of helped me see some like cultural perspectives of varieties of Anabaptists. And furthermore, I just want to say this concludes our third season of Plain Rainbows.
Ooh.
So happy Pride. Thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, and thank you to the Misfit Amish who are supporting this work. It means a lot to me. Thank you to all our listeners. Like, we couldn't do this without your support, and our guests. Like, y'all have been an amazing journey this year. Like, I can't even describe how many different ideas and thoughts y'all have brought forth in me, and how much it has affected my ability to be creative and to be my best fucking self. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I started challenging and questioning things. And to anybody who may be experiencing some of the things that, we have discussed in previous episodes of Plain Rainbows, I'd say this: y'all, let me explain to you that if you experience attraction to the same gender, or you have some form of gender identity that you don't necessarily align with what you were assigned with at birth, that you, regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, you are a valid, whole human being. And if you feel like you're imperfect, maybe you're just perfectly imperfect. Maybe this is your fucking journey and you get to live your life however the fuck you want to, as long as you're not harming people. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Don't harm people. Don't lie to people.
Furthermore, go forth and live your best fucking life. Shine your light. Be you.
That's right. That's right.
And if you need to be closeted for safety reasons, we do support you. We are here for you. There are people on our advisory board. There are people at the Misfit Amish who will actually support you. And there are people like at the Trevor Project who will support you. There are people like Kelly was talking about in the support groups who will support you. You are worthy. You are a whole, valid human being, and you deserve to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. Happy fucking Pride.
Amen.